Welcome to Dubai Future Horizons, special edition live from South by Southwest. Now you can applaud again. Horizons connects you with researchers, with foresighters, with futurists, with scientists from all over the world, all year round, and it is presented by the Dubai Future Foundation and Remote Daily. I'm Felix Zeltner. I'm your host. I'm a journalist and the founder of Remote Daily, and have the huge honor to host you here at South by Southwest. It's a huge privilege for me to be here in this space that never was there. I've been coming to South by since 2011, and I've never experienced anything like this in Austin. And now we bring two parts of the world together, Dubai and Austin, space and Earth. And fittingly, you're looking at what our guests are doing, and we will just have a loop on here in the background so you can immerse yourself into their world. The topic of our conversation today is how can you build human futures beyond Earth? How can you build human futures beyond Earth? And I'm delighted to welcome, first up, the first Canadian female commercial astronaut, Shawna Pandya. Welcome. Huge applause for Shawna. Hi, Shawna.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Stellar, some might say.
Is that what astronauts say when you ask them, how are you? They say,
I think we're contractually
stellar.
Obligated to say that.
Okay. I didn't know. And next up, the first person from the UAE in space, Hazzaa Al Mansouri. Applause for Hazzaa.
Hey,
welcome.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing good.
You breached a contract.
He's already been to space. So
okay, I see. Hazzaa, I just learned you are actually based in Houston these days.
Yes, I am.
So for you, this was a very short trip.
It is very short, I would say. Yeah, 3 hours. Actually, you from launch to reach the ISS, it's about 3 hours.
Like Houston, Austin.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so you know. But it's also two different planets.
Oh, totally.
From Houston to Austin. We can talk about that another day. How is South by Southwest so far for you?
It is incredible. The caliber of the conversation, imagination, creativity here, it's just so much. And for me, when I look at something through my unique lens and background of science, medicine, space, even if it's totally unrelated to space, I find myself asking, what would this look like in space? So it just breeds more ideas.
What would South by look like in space?
I think we have to explore that now.
Wow. Just thinking, where would the Hilton be?
Hopefully in a stable orbit.
And the main stage and the tacos? Yeah, that's a great question. Hazzaa, for you so far, how has this gathering been?
I love it. It's the first time here in Austin and the South by Southwest. I love the vibe, and I love it's a mixture of art, films, tech, space. So it's really amazing.
Did you meet any other astronauts?
Yes, actually, I met Artemis crew yesterday. They are here also doing the talks, and it was really great to meet them. And actually, we are meeting like every day at Johnson Space Center. We are working together. So it is just catching up and sharing with them Dubai chocolate. It's a trend now, so they loved it.
So can I just interrupt to talk about the chocolate? Because
yes.
I'm sure everyone wants to know. I just learned about this viral chocolate 2 days ago. I was in India before this. My cousin was raving to me. We were on the way to the airport. She was, just salivating to try it. And then 2 days later, I get to try this chocolate.
So what do you think?
It's, I might need more to try to just really make sure how much I love it.
Okay. Is this something to take to space?
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah.
So speaking of innovation, I work with a number of commercial space companies as a medical advisor, and I also advise a space chocolate company. And so how's this for innovative? So who here loves chocolate?
Oh.
Few of you. Okay. So who here loves caffeine? A few of you as well. So this chocolate is caffeinated chocolate. It also has your daily dose of vitamins in it. It doesn't crumble in microgravity. That's really important. And then it has nootropics like citicoline and lion's mane mushroom for focus. And so this is like when we talk about the collision of ideas and innovation and creativity in the future. It's sort of like looking at the everyday, chocolate's fantastic, but what if it could be good for us? What if it could help us with cognitive performance, even physical performance in space and on Earth? So I think, it seems like a mundane comparison, but, the future can also be in chocolate.
Wow. When I broke my first Dubai chocolate, which was last November, it didn't crumble. It's more like a meal, actually. And the Germans were so crazy about it that around Christmas time, you could buy the broken down components of Dubai chocolate at the supermarket and make it yourself. That's how crazy the Germans got about Dubai chocolate, because we couldn't get it, so we just started selling the ingredients. Quick turnaround, because what we're looking here is your work. To be very honest with you, I would be terrified to go to space. And I thought about this thoroughly preparing for this talk, because you're looking at me like, but I really would love to know, why do you both want to go to space so badly? I mean, you have been, but you haven't been. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I mean, why not? This is the culmination of a lifelong dream. For those who don't know, I wanted to be an astronaut since I was a kid. I'm Canadian. I watched Canada's first female astronaut, Dr. Roberta Bondar, go to space. And when you're a kid, you really oversimplify things. So I looked at Dr. Bondar, I said, Canadian women can do that. That's amazing. And I thought, she's a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut. So I'm going to go be a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut. And it seems to have worked out for me. And so right now it's anticipation, it's excitement. In suborbital spaceflight, the challenge is performance. I liken it to a performance art or performance sport, because you have this finite period of microgravity. You have minutes in which to do your science, to interpret those results in real time, to make decision points in real time, and you have an entire team of ground support and scientists counting on you, and you don't want to let them down. So this will be our research institute's second space flight. I was the lead scientist on one of our payloads from the ground, and we were watching Kelly Girardi, our astronaut, perform in real time. And it was like watching a coach and seeing again, a very Canadian comparison, seeing their star figure skater stick the landing, and you're just so proud of them. And so knowing now that I'll actually be flying to space with Kelly on our next mission, and being the one that the scientists are relying on. It's not being terrified, it's being intent on performing, delivering the results the team wants to see, and just being the executor of all of that effort, and not wanting to let anyone down.
You're not terrified because you're in a true mission.
You're focused,
There's a clear goal, and the whole team has put their time into it, and you're there to do it. Absolutely.
And you want to respect the effort, the coordination, the rehearsal that's gone into that, and that's what the focus is it's objectives and outcomes.
I think we can learn a lot from you about teamwork and about leadership, and I think there have been many conversations here at South by around this with astronauts, which is fascinating.
No one's gone to space simply by doing it alone.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hazzaa, why are you not terrified?
Oh my God! So my story is different. So when I was a kid, there was no UAE astronaut back then in '80s. So it was like fantasy for me, more like watching cartoons and movies, Star Wars, Star Trek, feeding myself with these images. Like maybe one day, because it was impossible at that time to have anyone from our country to go, because we didn't have any program back then in '80s and '90s. So when I just graduated from high school, I thought I'm gonna get closer to stars by being a pilot, so I joined the Air Force and become a 16 pilot eventually. So I enjoyed doing that, and it's always fascinating for me. I grew up in a remote area in UAE. It's towards the Liwa area, towards Sand Dune, and towards the south. So it is a very remote area. So at night you can see bright stars, Milky Way edges, and listening to my parents, ancestors, when I'm gathering together in the campfire and just talking about ancestors, how they use the stars to navigate, to know the seasons and how to go for fishing. So it's just, I found the link there, and I thought it's impossible. So until 2017, when they did the announcement in UAE, and it was the right time for me. I was like at the peak of my career, and without hesitation, I applied. And because when you look back at the history of astronauts at the beginning, Apollo flights, they were all came from like aviation, because there is a couple of similarities in terms of flying the vehicle, doing the procedures and everything. It's part of the puzzle, but eventually now we are selecting astronauts from different backgrounds, because diversity is important, because each one of us bring his own experts and his own like knowledge, and that's just make it a better team, and also make it a better mission, successful mission for us.
I think you were chosen from 4,000.
It was a 4,000, yes, in
applicants?
2017 when they did the announcement. So like the selection in 2018, it was really, each time I was calculating my percentage from that big number. As they go down, it's like, can I make it? So it was really tough, and just to be selected, and thanks God, it's a big honor and privilege to just represent not only our country, but the whole humanity. When you are up there, you are just a human ambassador.
Okay.
So it is a totally different mindset. So you have to think about it this way.
Interesting. So, well, you talked about mission, you talked about representation, and the honor to be up there that, doesn't really leave a lot of room for fear. How many competitors did you have against you?
So we do things a little bit differently. So when we look at avenues towards space, I like to say this is the best possible time to be alive in human spaceflight, because previously the only way to get to space was through a space agency, and there were a finite number of countries with space agencies and human spaceflight programs. And so I grew up in Canada with the Canadian Space Agency. It has long history of being in space. One of the first countries in space after the Soviet Union and the US launched the Sputnik satellite early on. However, despite that history, we've only ever had 4 selections since the history of the Canadian Space Agency, and I was always too early in my career to ever participate in one of them. And so now, in the era of commercial human spaceflight, we are seeing this increased era of access. So we are seeing access to space. We've heard about space tourists. We've heard about these companies sending their employees to get more user experience data. We've heard of competition winners. And through our research institute at the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, it is leveraging space as the next great research laboratory.
Okay.
So we believe in, and all of our flights will be research space flights. And so we literally are building the spacecraft on the way up. This hasn't been done before. We, cemented our first success with our ISO-1 research space flight. And then when it came to securing the second space flight, it was looking at the experience, the history, the teamwork, the operations. I've been with our institute for 10 years, have done 11 parabolic research flights to date.
Which to me also sound very frightening.
It's, they call it the vomit comet for a reason.
The vomit comet?
I'll spare you the mental image of throwing
Okay.
up in 0G.
Are we going to... No. Okay.
It is the qualification process, and being assigned to this flight it still feels surreal. It still feels like it's sinking in, but it's also knowing that the reputation of the institute, does rest with its flyers, and we've taken it a step even further. We want this to be a sustainable path towards suborbital research space flights. And so now we've created a research pathway and program through it. We call it the IIAS Flight Opportunities Program. I've actually, in addition to everything else that I do, I'm the executive director of this program. So all of our qualifications, criteria, curriculum, research priorities, training, all of that falls under my portfolio. And so when we talk about what it takes to fly with IIAS as a research astronaut, it comes down to 7 criteria. It's research and science, teamwork, excellence, community service, leadership, and experience. You have to embody those values to be able to fly as a IIAS research astronaut.
And just like we're sitting here, there will be more astronauts in the future, just like there will be more podcasters in the future.
And podcasters in space.
I should also say that I was chosen from 10,000 podcasters to sit here and do this podcast with you. It was a tough assignment.
That's a tougher selection than Hazzaa had to go through.
Yeah, not a serious one. How can you build human futures beyond Earth is our title today. And I was wondering if there was a little bit of a poster outside saying, hey, sign up for the first crew to live on Moon, or let's say Mars. Would you sign up, Hazzaa?
Sure. Without thinking, I have to consult my wife first. So it's me. It's probably being selfish, but I love to to adventure and just to explore new places. So to be in this career, to explore like new frontiers, to go to back to the moon in future, and maybe to have this opportunity to go to Mars, without hesitation, I will apply for that. So it's a risky one. You have to be a calculated risk, definitely. And now I think it is a little bit challenging to reach that state because there's a technical challenges and also logistic, and also we are not ready as human beings to set the sail to reach Mars now.
And to talk to our respective life partners about it. I mean, what would you say to your wife after you signed up?
Before I applied actually to be an astronaut, I had to ask her. So I asked her like, I'm applying to be an astronaut. So because she's part of this journey, she's gonna be part of it definitely without doubt. Because being up there and my wife and my kids being down here and looking at me and knowing that maybe there is anything may happen on the way or up there, so it is a very risky place and very risky mission. So also they need to be aware about it. And actually NASA here and our folks back home, they are really doing great job in family support. They are really doing great job on making sure that we have the continuous communication with our families, and when we are on board the station, we have actually video calls. We can call them. We can call from station, and the phone the number that you will see on your screen, it's actually a Houston number. So when I was there, I called a couple of my friends, and then they didn't pick up because they see like they missed it. Sorry. So it's a great opportunity, to be up there and to share it with everyone, with your family, with everyone that you know. So that's a great privilege.
And what's the app? Is it WhatsApp or FaceTime?
No, it's not. It's a special app actually. They call it VC. It's actually on board the station. Okay. Now they are actually going towards like Teams and these platforms. Just make it more simple because everyone knows how to use it. So
make Teams more simple.
Yeah.
On Earth
In case you're listening,
I think
Microsoft.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
These days, so they make it more easier and accessible for families, and to just have this continuous communication with our families. So, and to share with them, real time what we are doing up there. So we are the plumbers, the scientists, the technicians, everything, the reporters.
So it sounds like you would sign up to live on another planet because you already went through it in your thought process and in your training, and your family is sort of tuned in with that idea.
Yep. Yeah.
How is it for you? Would you sign up to live on Moon or Mars?
So the first thing my mom wants to do is scream yes in all caps, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And then the more rational part of my brain is, what are the details? The devil is always in the details.
Yeah.
Because
you might have to use Teams all the time.
I mean, that might be the deal breaker. Although, as a quick side digression, I will say in defense of those of us who do receive calls from the ISS, they look like a spam number. And so the first time the only time I ever received a call from the ISS, I thought it was spam and let it go to voicemail. And then when it called the second time, I thought, it's a Houston area code. Maybe I should pick it up. And sure enough, it was from space. So if you ever get the 281 area code, maybe just hedge. It could be a telemarketer, in which case I'm sorry. It could be the ISS.
Scam likely. I always tell my daughter, like, scam likely is calling. Do you want to pick up? So maybe you sometimes should pick up.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes take that chance.
The more interstellar we become.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It could be from space. So coming back to your question, it's what are to build on what Hazzaa was saying is, what are the mission risks? What are the objectives? Am I able to contribute to that mission? Because if it's something that doesn't align with my personal values, if it's like be the first to Mars, but it's high risk. It's more send people in huge droves. You know, it will be, we haven't really thought through the mission infrastructure, how to mitigate radiation and microgravity or reduced gravity, physiological deleterious changes. You know, maybe we should put a little bit more thought into creating a sustainable, decreased risk mission architecture. So for me, it's sort of what is the mission, what is the duration, what are the objectives, and how can my skill set contribute to it? Because when I look at what drives me on a daily basis, it's 5 things. It's getting to space. It's making a lasting contribution to space medicine and how it will impact human spaceflight for generations to come. It's taking the best of what we do in space medicine innovation and bringing it back to our most in-need terrestrial healthcare challenges on Earth. It's facilitating access to space, and then it's leaving a lasting positive impact on humanity. So if that mission aligns with those values, then sign me up, I'm there.
Okay. Can you make a prediction of how long it is going to take us to build the first community out there?
You know, that's a great question.
I think to build a community, we have to start from moon.
Okay.
This is then I think the next phase is to can we do it on the surface of the moon? If we can do it, if we can do that sustainable present there, I think we can do it in future on Mars. So we have to start from place closer, which is the moon. So this is why we are having now Artemis missions. And this is starting from there, so I think this is the beginning. So to go to Mars, the trip by itself, it's about 6 to 7 months. So there is they call it the planet alignment, which is happening every 2 years. It's not literally alignment, but the trajectory alignment, where they launch the window to launch like rockets towards a prop recently towards Mars. So 6 months or 7 months to reach Mars. And to go back and forth, it's like 3 years. So you have to wait 2 years, you know, for the next window, and then come back. So it is a 3 years trip going back and forth.
It's not Houston, Austin.
No.
Yeah. And Shawna, you just mentioned that you are, you know, you're a physician, neuroscientist, and you mentioned the medical part of being an astronaut, which is fascinating that you spend so much thinking on this. Because when I think about astronauts and medical issues, I think about muscles, because I've heard about that. Think about balance, and maybe think about sleep, and all these like obvious things. But can you maybe give 1 or 2 examples for a favorite medical challenge that most of us don't know about?
Yeah.
That people in space have.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, if someone asks you what you've learned about space medicine after this session, if nothing else, just tell them that space is trying to kill you. Because when we talk about the hazards of the spaceflight environment, we talk about, for exploration class missions, the RIDGE framework. We talk about radiation, isolation and confinement, distance from Earth. So, you know, at the greatest distance between Earth and Mars, the round-trip communication delay can be 48 minutes, or when the sun is between the Earth and Mars, it can be a 2 to 3 week communications blackout. If there's a medical emergency, that is it. You are on your own. There's no calling Houston for help. There's the challenges of reduced gravity, so bone density loss, muscle mass loss, fluid shifts, and then there's everything else that falls under environment. So that includes exposure to the local regolith. The dust on Mars and Moon can be very much of an irritant to the eyes, the skin, and the respiratory system. So there's a lot there. It's not just space medicine, it's what in space medicine do you want to focus on? My own area of research focuses on psychological resilience, sexuality and reproduction in space, neuroscience, science, and the development of enabling health technologies. And so I love thinking of this extreme case of Earth-independent operations. How do we empower the crew to be able to act autonomously, to make decisions, to assess, to triage, to treat? And what if it's the crew medical officer who's the one who's impacted? How do we do just-in-time training? How do we empower that non-medical crew to make decisions and treat? And so what are the technologies that support that, from AI, machine learning, virtual reality, and then where do we need to make investments in deep tech infrastructure that can support all of that? So there's a lot that keeps me up at night because it's this incredibly complex but such a fulfilling problem space to work on.
Do you have one favorite example that you're one favorite medical challenge?
Yeah,
you're working
sure.
on at the moment?
Yeah, so I actually work with a Canadian company called Luxonic Technologies, and they leverage immersive technologies such as augmented reality and mixed reality and virtual reality to deliver healthcare. Because when you're packing for space, you have these constraints, including mass, volume, power. So VR addresses a lot of that because it's a lot more compact. So
You're packing for, like, you mean like a
well, yeah,
suitcase?
I mean it's a suitcase, but not really. But like you're literally you'll have finite space within your spacecraft, and it costs per kilogram to send everything up to space. So you really want to Tetris what you're bringing with you. You're going to have a finite budget of what you can bring with you. You can't draw too much power because you only have so much power with your spacecraft. So
Do you guys have like overhead compartments? Like, you bring like an actual suitcase
No,
and people are like, no, it's too heavy, come on. And then you have to put your electrical toothbrush out. Does that ever happen? Or is somebody telling you, giving you a list of, please, don't bring Harry Potter this time?
so
Actually, it's predefined like items that you can take with you. There is the no-go items.
No-go items.
Yes.
No open
yes,
flames
yes,
on the
like
station.
It's like they will assess that. You have like personal like items that you can carry with you, but they will look at it and they will see if it's like any risk, odor, or like anything that can impact systems on board the station.
Okay.
However, like pictures, photos you can take with you, like toys.
Did
stuff.
you sneak anything in?
No, you cannot. It's all calculated, because it's gonna impact the center of gravity of the capsule. So you cannot just take anything you like and just smuggle it.
But just to understand, do you bring a suitcase?
It's not like a
Or is it backpack?
suitcase. It's like it's not. You're gonna hand them the items. They will pack it, for you, and then they will put it like in a special containers. Like for ISIS, we have like CTBs. It's like I would say 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters, like boxes.
Okay.
So they will just make sure that everything's fit in there, and then they will just make sure that it's shipped with you or with the cargo vehicles before or after. For the clothes itself, they will ship it like it is. We cannot wash our clothes there, so it's like a one-time use, and just throw it. Usually, a couple of like cargo vehicles that dock to the station. After we just extract all the science from them and the equipment and the spare parts, we use them as like a trash pans. So we throw everything there, and eventually they're gonna burn in the atmosphere.
Really?
Yes, so this is the only way.
Wait, so your underwear is floating?
They're gonna burn.
Okay.
So when you make a wish on a shooting star, it might have been
watch out
Hazzaa's
for what
underwear.
else.
But Shawna, I mean, back to the serious medical. I was just thinking, like, we have a friend in the audience here. I know Stan, who just told me yesterday he just finished his paramedical training. Kudos to him. So he might go to space soon. But what for for the most of us, if we have a cardiac arrest, like, we can't help ourselves. Like, how do you? What are like medical procedures that you learn to perform on yourselves? Like, what if you have a cardiac arrest on Mars?
Well, if you have a cardiac arrest, you're not performing CPR on yourself, first of all. So let's finish this discussion about technologies, and then we can talk about what procedures in reduced gravity environments look like. And so to continue, like when we talk about in bringing enabling technologies with us, they have to meet the design and packing constraints for space, and then they also have to serve some purpose. And so, for example, when we look at virtual reality medical procedures that the crew can train on to maintain their skills, maintain that muscle memory, retire risk, that's important, because when we look at, NASA has this entire human research roadmap of risks to long duration missions. And on it, for example, at one point was risk of skills deterioration. So that's how VR can empower crews in space.
Okay.
So now let's look at the medical emergencies. And so again, NASA has probably one of the most comprehensive lists of things that can go wrong in space. And there's everything on that list from cardiac arrest to annoying everyday occurrences like a sinus headache or a pressure headache, to the equally terrifying but maybe not life-threatening diarrhea in space, because disaster. So when you think about cardiac arrest,
Visuals.
again, I'll spare you the mental
Thank you for
image.
that.
You're welcome.
Yep.
So when you're thinking about, the life-threatening stuff, cardiac arrest in space, there's entire bodies of literature into doing this mindfully, into doing this accordance with the standards of care the same standards of care that we would have on Earth. So for example, the European Society for Aerospace Medicine has this wonderful paper, it's open access, on CPR guidelines in space. So when you do CPR on Earth, you are doing your chest compressions, you're doing it to your favorite Bee Gees song or Staying Alive. If you do that in a microgravity environment without strapping yourself down to the patient, Newton's third law says that you get one chest compression in and then you're ricocheting to the other side of the spacecraft. So there's actually guidelines for how you would effectively do CPR in the microgravity environment. You can either do it by a bear hug from behind and latch yourself to the patient. You can brace yourself against the ceiling. You can strap yourself to the patient. There's a number of methods. But then extending this to the Mars scenario. So again, if you're interested, a lot of this is open source. NASA has this fascinating document called Medical Concept of Operations for Mars. And you can actually read about the medical infrastructure for Earth to Mars operations. And if something goes terribly wrong on the launch pad, you abort. If something goes terribly wrong in Earth orbit, you abort. Once you have made that trans-Mars injection and something goes medically wrong, there is no medevac capability. So either you're not sending your favorite astronauts or you are working to increase your capability to, this is how we think about retiring risk. So you either accept risk or you identify the risk and you mitigate it.
Did you just say you might not send your favorite astronauts?
Well, you may not want to if you're looking at look.
That's
if you're
a fun
on Mars,
meeting to have.
If you're looking at the medical concept of operation for Mars and you're accepting that there is no medevac capability, because look, as Hazzaa was saying, it's a 6 to 9 month one-way journey to Mars. So either by the time that you're medevacing someone from Mars to Earth, assuming that the launch window is favorable, that problem is either fixed itself or it's too late, right? So then coming back to this extreme example of cardiac arrest on Mars, you've performed CPR, you've gotten what we call in the medical world ROSC, or return of spontaneous circulation. Then the question becomes, then what? What is your infrastructure? Do you have a full-on intensive care unit capability on Mars? Do you have surgical capabilities on Mars? Do you have a ventilator? Because if yes, then you can proceed with that care pathway. But if you've gotten a pulse back and you do not have a ventilator capability, then we have to discuss the ethics of futility of care. And that becomes a complex as well as morale challenging situation, because this is your crewmate, this is your family in space. And are you doing them any favors by putting them through the physical stress and trauma of getting their pulse back, but you're not having any medical infrastructure to be able to support life-prolonging measures? So this becomes incredibly complex and ethically challenging very quickly. And this is why it's so important to be having these discussions, even if Mars mission infrastructure is still years away.
You have never been my favorite colleague anyway.
I mean, like,
Famous
after
last
this
words.
explanation, I mean, like,
yeah.
people, they would change
Who
their
hasn't
mind.
said that?
Yeah,
Yes, I mean, like,
exactly.
however, like, when they select astronauts, they start to select them like really healthy astronauts, so they minimize that complication on board the station. Or, for example, and also, if you notice that in my Superman flying there is like a table, and that it's coming again. So there is a table, they call it a medical table. There, that's the place where we do like a CPR. And as Shawna mentioned, that it's actually in microgravity, it's difficult to just embrace yourself so that you can do CPR. So you can just put your feet on the other side of the module and just start to do CPR, or just with the belts or something, just to help the crew member. And we've been trained in different scenarios and been qualified. And always when they select the crew that they're gonna go to space, one of them they are really keen in selecting with the high medical background, so they can support. Mostly it is more like now on board the station, it's like a telecommunication session with the doctors if anything happened. But
back on Teams again.
Yes, Teams. Oh my God, that's number one. So, but we didn't have that privilege all the time. There's like coverage, LOS, where the loss of signals, that we have to work by ourselves and we have to figure it out without any support from ground.
I want to talk about training in a minute, but I just want to see if anybody has a question, because I think my favorite paramedic here has a question, and we have two second questions. So Sten, what would you like to know?
So understanding that there is a per kilo restriction, and that will be there for foreseeable future, how do you see a kind of a personalized genetic medicine contributing to the future of space medicine and vice versa? For example, are you seeing synthesizing IV fluids in space, 3D printing medicine, or actually having personalized medicine, developed on site in the mission, basically based on the astronauts' biomarkers, for example?
Those were like 4 questions.
Sorry.
Well, I'll try to. So how do you think about personalized medicine?
Short question. Can you 3D print like IV fluids and meds in space
So
in the
I
future?
love this question. I couldn't have planted a better question myself, because again, for anyone who's excited, loves working on challenging problems, is a budding entrepreneur, and loves space, this is the best possible time to be involved with space medicine and human spaceflight, because all of what we're talking about has been proposed. So, talking about not just the budget, the mass budget restrictions, you can't bring it all with you, but even like looking at the shelf life of pharmaceuticals. So there was this paper from Duke University that came out last summer that estimated over the course of a 3-year Mars mission profile, and most Mars mission profiles that are proposed right now, range from 400 days for very, very short duration, which is called an accelerated mission profile, to a 3 to 5 year mission profile. So it makes sense why we're talking about 3 years. So the Duke study estimated that over the course of a 3-year mission profile, that 60 to 98% of pharmaceuticals that we bring with us would expire. So it's not just a mass budget problem, it's actually a need problem. So, this is why I love talking about in situ resource utilization, off-world biomanufacturing, in situ biomanufacturing, because these are literally burgeoning areas of study today. And so being able to make on demand what you need in your environment. And so very coolly, DARPA is doing a lot of really cool work in this area. They funded a 2.7 million B-Shore study to genetically engineer yeast to be able to alter their production, looking at the feedstocks that optimize their output. So this can be meaning that you can engineer yeast to produce vitamins, supplements, food. And now they've just announced this week this incredible solicitation for biomanufacturing large-scale structures in space. This is sci-fi stuff that's happening today. And the list goes on of 3D printing tools in space, 3D printing whatever you might need, and then using biomanufacturing to be able to close that loop of not having to bring it all with you. And so that also solves some problems for life support, for food production. So these are exactly the right questions to be asking.
And you can still give the expired stuff to your less favorite.
Exactly. Just pick your least favorite astronaut.
Answers your questions then. Your question, please.
Yes. Okay. So you started to talk about Artemis a little bit, and so I would love to hear your thoughts on the Gateway, the space station that they're building orbiting the moon instead of the Earth, and your thoughts on that and how you feel like it'll be a pivotal step in the construction of a permanent lunar base.
So definitely, like I would say, it's the next station is the Gateway. And also, it's one of the new projects in UAE, because we are participating as a partners. We're going to build one of the modules on board that Gateway lunar, I would say, station. So it's going to be a lot of challenges, just sending like modules that far, communications, and also to be isolated that far from Earth for any like incidents, anything happen on board the station Gateway, and just sending crew back. It's going to be something that we have to address, understand, and work around it. Now the roadmap for that, it's going to be 2029 and beyond. It's going to launch modules, and then they will connect them together. And then eventually we'll have the Gateway, which is going to be orbiting on polar orbit around the moon. And that's going to give us the ability to land on the moon in future and build that settlement there and explore if the possibility of can we call it home in future, moon surface, and from there we can go beyond that. So one of the challenges there is the radiations, is the big thing, communication, and also isolation. On board the station, ISS, we are very close to Earth. It's just very close, 400 kilometers, 250 miles. So anytime you can do an emergency evacuation and come back to Earth within 3 hours. There, it's going to be a lot of challenges, and we are also looking at that. And I think it's going to be, I would say, learn as we go, and we're going to explore how we can tackle that like challenges, and how we can build the new technologies to enable us to live there for a very long durations. For now, it is about the gateway itself. It's going to be habitable for about 30 days to 90 days. And other than that, it's going to be autonomous. All AI, maybe it's going to be run by AI in future. So that's one of the things that they're looking at. So
I've seen Space Odyssey 2001.
yes.
Let me tell you why that's not a good idea.
Are you an aspiring astronaut?
No, but my art was sent to space in this lunar museum. And
Wow.
so it made me obsessed. But now you mentioned AI, so sorry, you can ignore my question. But how do you think AI will be a part of future space missions?
I would say on board the station now we have a couple of like experiments. One of them like ESA experiment. They call it Simon. It's like a floating robot, and it can read your face and like interact with you sometimes, and it's helping us a little bit with the procedures, with a couple of things, and also give us like comfort, like there's companions, something with you. So it's interesting. It's there, and it's been developed as we go. There is Intball from JAXA, Japanese Space Agency, where they explore that, helping us more with that. So it's floating with the small fans, and just being there, you feel like a little bit.
Companionship.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's what's interesting. Yeah.
Hazzaa, you are training aspiring astronauts, hence my question, and maybe some people. Does anybody have aspiring astronauts in their family? We have a third question. Please,
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, thanks so much for
Sorry about
being
that.
here. Just going back to the sort of comment about pharmaceuticals, there have been trials with drugs in low gravity environments like rapamycin. Those drugs have different results in those environments. Wondering if what that sort of looks like, and dealing with issues like osteoporosis and bone density long term, if the biohackingness of it all is going to impact some of that thought moving forward.
Wow. Okay. Where do we start? I swear I didn't plan these questions, but I'm so excited about this. These areas of research. So. Pharmaceutical. So when we talk about off-world manufacturing, biomanufacturing, it's not just the life sciences or semiconductors or fiber optics, but let's talk about pharmaceuticals and why it's interesting. We've known since the 80s that protein crystals grows more slowly and larger and more symmetrically in the microgravity environment. And so now there's companies looking at, well, how does that affect pharmaceutical development? So Merck, the Earth-based pharmaceutical company, spent $14 million US upfront for R&D to say what happens when we develop Keytruda, a well-known chemotherapy agent in space, and that's used for mesothelioma, cervical cancer, head and neck cancers. And what happened with Keytruda, this is earth-shattering, it's astounding, is that the formulation had a viscosity such that it was more shelf stable. So if you are a patient right now who needs chemotherapy, you are spending a day of your life in the hospital every month getting an IV infusion that impacts your quality of life, that impacts healthcare costs. This new formulation does not need to be refrigerated. It can be injected subcutaneously under the skin such that you can get the shot at your doctor's office, or if you're a savvy patient, you can inject it yourself. Think about the impact on the quality of life, the cost savings. And so 14 million R&D upfront isn't a small sum, but the insights from that study are helping Merck change its Earth-based manufacturing processes to optimize future manufacturing of Keytruda, which will soon enter clinical trials. And also, Not bad for them. The patent on Keytruda was expiring soon anyways, so this gives them a new business direction. There's companies like Varda now who are looking at optimizing pharmaceutical development in space. And just to quickly make a comment on biohacking, as much as we think that this is earth-shattering, there are folks who are thinking about this today. The European Space Agency has invested in studies looking at human hibernation and how that would help save on the volume of a spacecraft on the way to Mars if you woke the crew up 3 weeks before you landed on the red planet. And they estimate that you can save 33% of the volume of your spacecraft. There was a study in the MIT Review that looked at splicing elephant genes into humans, not to create like an elephant-human astronaut hybrid, but because elephants don't get cancer. They have so many copies of the P53 oncoediting gene that they don't get cancer. And so when you're talking about willingly sending astronauts into this high radiation, high risk environment, maybe you have an ethical obligation to protect them. And so this study was saying, okay, well then why not give them more protection through DNA biohacking, as you say?
Question answered. Mic drop. Hazzaa, did you, just a follow-up to this, because we were just talking with Shawna about biohacking. Did you change something in your life on Earth since you came back from space? Because you may have learned some hacks there.
Nothing. I mean, like for us, we prepared for a human space flight by exercises. So we exercise on ground and to have a really bone density and high muscle mass, so that when you are on board the station, when they're gonna decay, they're gonna be decaying very slowly. And also on board the station, it is mandatory. It's scheduled in your timeline to do every day for 2 hours to 2.5 of exercises. There's like 3 machines, cycling, running, also treadmill, and also weightlifting. All of them, they just to introduce a load in your body, especially that the weightlifting. It's designed in a way that's vacuum cylinders mimic the load of pressure in the lower parts, so that it's giving you a load in the bone and also the muscles. So when you will come back from space, the recovery is going to be easier and faster. So there is different protocols on board the station just to mitigate that impact of being in space for a very long time, and just the recovery is going to be faster. But there is the radiations on board the station. It is not that much because it is 400 kilometers. Van Allen belt, it's up to 700 kilometers, so we are still protected by that.
But you evaded my question a little bit. Did you change something in your daily routines after coming back?
After coming back, just running. You have to just run just to increase the impact in your bone, so you will recover. Especially the bone density, the recovery for that after flight is about 3 years, up to 3 years, to go back to the same percentage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So only 22, you were back at.
Yep.
Okay, you full bone. There was another question here, sir. Do we have a microphone? Yes, here in the first row, please, the gentleman.
Yeah, just raise your hand. Yeah.
And I saw you.
Just for perspective, 100-odd years ago, 102 years ago, Shackleton went to Antarctica. And there's a book about it called Endurance. And they had a heart attack, one of those crew members, and they all came back. 27 of them came back alive after 2 years in Antarctica. So just for perspective, this thing has been going on forever. And how long did you stay in space?
So that was the first mission for the United Arab Emirates. Was about a week, I would say, 8 days on board the station. Yeah. They are going now up to like a year on board the station. So they want to see what the impact of long duration. So in future that.
And now we have also astronauts up there who didn't want to be up there for so long, and they're still up there.
Yeah.
Which is also what I sometimes think about them up there, just thinking, when am I ever coming back?
Yeah, I mean, like it's a risky mission. I mean, like it's especially the current Boeing Starliner crew. They are coming hopefully next week, after 8 months.
Hopefully.
Mission. Yeah, hopefully. So I think everything is lined, so they're gonna be.
Okay. Again, favorite colleagues, Yeah. We have another question here in the first row, so the microphone was just available. Oh, there it comes.
Awesome. It's a bit of a follow-on question, actually. So I've got a project that's focusing on immersive well-being, and we want to be an early thinker in stress and anxiety in space travel for the general public. So my question to you is, how do you manage stress and anxiety when you're, far away from home, far away from essential things that you would usually have, going outside, on
Customer
top of
here.
the physical asset?
Yeah. That goes back to our first question. Why are you not afraid?
Yeah.
So what is there to say?
That's a great question, and it's good to see that there's these initiatives, because in the early centrifuge studies that took members of the general public, of the healthiest demographics, of folks with chronic disease, folks as old as age 89 with chronic heart disease and previous heart surgery, the number one thing that would disqualify people from taking them through suborbital flight profiles and G profiles in that environment, it wasn't the medical aspect, it was anxiety, claustrophobia, panic, or simply not being able to follow instructions. And coming back to this idea of how immersive can help inform that, it's really important, because what we learned through our work with Luxonic, that immersive technology company I was telling you about earlier, we also did some work with 360 video and using that to familiarize patients with medical procedures they might go through. And when you're a pediatric patient, when you're a kid, everything's scary, and especially if you have to be in this tunnel of an MRI for a prolonged period. And so in this small study, kids were familiarized to the MRI environment prior to undergoing the MRI procedure. And in 83% of cases, once they underwent that familiarization, they were able to forego sedation. You did not need to sedate the pediatric patient. So, there is a lot of practical application for immersive, for replicating training, for reducing anxiety. And, especially when we're talking about sending a new demographic to space, not the healthiest of the healthy, folks who may not have the necessary, typical select-in criteria of looking at austerity as an opportunity to grow, but may need help overcoming fear, claustrophobia. It's an excellent initiative.
Have you had a moment of anxiety when you were up there?
I'm like, no, it's probably at the beginning when I just entered the space station and trying to navigate, it feels weird because it's a continuous weightlessness. It's not like parabolic flights where it is like 30 seconds. And your brain just get freaked out, like how to navigate, how to move on board the station. I remember the first day I was trying to do like a fish style of movement, and it didn't work, so you have to figure it out as you go. So and then you feel like it's a second nature, like it's something that you do it without thinking about it. So it is our brain is really amazing how to adapt to microgravity and how to navigate.
What is the toughest thing you put young aspiring astronauts through in their training? Because you do that a lot.
Oh my God! So I think one of the toughest things that we do is preparing for spacewalk. It's the most riskiest thing that we can do, because you go outside. Just the only thing to protect you is the suit. You have to be knowledgeable about it, but because it's your vehicle. It's scrubbing CO2. It's giving you a protection from everything. And so in our training at Johnson Space Center, we do this a 6-hour continuation of training underwater at the NBL, a neutral buoyancy laboratory, where we just mimic doing a spacewalk. It's very challenging because it's physically and mentally, because you have to work against the gravity here on ground, and it's weigh about 350 pounds, 160 kilogram, so it's very heavy. And it feels like we call it spacewalk training, but the only thing that we do is moving by our hands. We translate, and like in the big mock-up, submerged underwater, like with our hands. So it feels like we are wearing like a glove, baseball gloves, and changing the tire. It's challenging because you lose your dexterity, you lose everything, and it's very challenging. So physically, and for 6 hours. And on board the station, actually, we reach like 7 hours of being outside, so it is challenging job. It's the most riskiest thing that we can.
Wow. We have about 5 minutes left. We have one more question.
Maybe along the same vein, I think to myself that like your entire human being is interconnected, right? It's not just about your physical health, but it's also about like your mental health and like even your spiritual health. So what are you learning in space about like those things, like your mental and your spiritual health, how that intersects with your physiological health?
I think it's more like setting expectations, what you are gonna anticipate there, and the preparation for the mission itself, and the support from the family, definitely because they're part of it. Because if you are up there and something happening to your family, and you know that nobody gonna support them, that's gonna impact you and your performance on board the station. So that's really important. And usually when we are trained and prepare for a mission on board the station, we get to know the crew members like 2 years before the mission. We train together for 2 years. We fly together to different places, training, so it's become like a family. So that's really important. That's gonna impact our like performance as the crew members on board the station. So you have to be aware about that. So, and we have a lot of means on board the station to help us to communicate with our families on ground here. So from Teams to calls to look at Earth. So this is one of the things that we have to think about it as we go further than low Earth orbit, because it's closer to Earth. We can see places, we can recognize places that we went to. So it feels like we are closer, still closer to Earth. As you go further to Moon and beyond,
you won't see Earth anymore.
Nothing. It's just gonna be like a dot,
like a star, maybe on the horizon.
So it's gonna be difficult to have that, connectivity with the Earth. So it's going to be challenging.
Carl Sagan's famous pale blue dot.
Yep.
And, to kind of build on that, we talked about the medical aspects of space exploration and isolation and confinement. And so there's kind of two ways to think of it, because when you're selecting at the agency level, you want folks who exhibit not just that physical health, but that mental health with that select-in criteria. They're good teammates. They can also deal with long periods of minimal stimulation. They can work just as well in isolation as they can in a team. And in positive psychology, there's terms to describe this kind of person who looks at adversity and challenging environments as an opportunity for character growth, as an opportunity to rise to the occasion. And we call that salutogenesis. And then, on the positive aspect, looking at, the spiritual transformation that happens, there's something that's called the overview effect. And it's sometimes described as, this transformation that happens when you see the Earth from above and just seeing the Earth being borderless as this beautiful marble in which everyone's united. And I picked up this book recently, actually on the way to South by Southwest, called Orbital. It's the 2024 Booker Prize. And honestly, I think in reading that book, it's so poetically done. It's about 6 fictional astronauts on the ISS, but just more the poetic aspects of looking back at Earth. I think you can get that transformation of what it means to be a human on this spaceship that we call Earth. But the way I think of it when we talk about the fact that I will someday get to see the curvature of Earth from space is, someone told me, don't think of it as a transformation. Think of it as an amplification of who you are at your core. So you're not going to change overnight. You're not suddenly going to become an ambassador for humanity if that wasn't who you were at your core. And so for me, I view that as a challenge and an incentive to become the best possible version of myself before I ever get to space.
I think we can all agree that we don't let them go. We do a 2-hour podcast instead of 1 hour, and I will ignore any protests from the team and behind the scenes. Do we have time for one more question? What do you think? Yes? Okay. Here we go.
Hi, I love that. So thank you. I think I'm a consultant in regeneration, and I always thought about going to space as a way for us to regenerate our home. And you mentioned the pharmaceutical example. I would love for you to tell me 2 or 1 more example that how space is helping us regenerate ourselves and our home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I see 25 seconds. Let's see how quickly I can do this. Quickly, regenerative medicine, there's an entire consortium of people from commercial space, pharmaceutical scientists, all working together, looking at stem cells specifically. That market alone is projected to reach 3.6 billion over the next 10 years at a 25% or 10%, one of the two, compounded annual growth rate. And so why do we look at stem cells in space because they can offer us models for disease and aging on Earth by giving us insight into what accelerated aging in the space environment does. They can give us models of when we look at 3D printing in the spaceflight environment, we don't have to worry about stem tissues collapsing under the weight of 1G, so they can grow more spherically and form organoids and form models of organs, which can also give us insights into both organ response in the spaceflight environment, as well as, again, models for disease on Earth. So these are just two examples. I know we're short on time, but this is so exciting to look at.
So regarding the bio 3D printer, actually we did it last year on board the station. They did print knee meniscus, human knee meniscus on board the station because it's the easiest one. As you grow up, you figure out that's the part that you need most.
And there is also a website from NASA. I think there's about 2,000 so-called spin-offs now.
Spin-offs, yes. Every year they release that spin-offs that NASA did, and that's the benefit of that here on grounds for that. Yeah. So many.
I so don't want to end this podcast. It's very hard with you two. One last thing. What would you like to leave us with? Maybe there's a personal life motto that you share, that you want to share, or maybe a message to aspiring astronauts in the room. I'm leaving the options open here a little bit.
Yes. For me, I would say appreciation. That's what I felt on board the station. I appreciate everything that I got here on ground, from gravity to the warmth of the sun hitting your face, to free oxygen. It's calculated on board the station, to CO2 scrubbing by the trees that we don't know about. So everything we have here on ground is for free. As you go beyond this planet, it's going to be not for free. So you have to appreciate that. Appreciate the support that I got to reach this level in my life, from my parents, my friends, my colleagues, everyone that just give me something from their personality to reach this state. So it's appreciation for me, for everything. Yeah.
You're definitely our favorite astronaut and future commercial favorite astronaut. Your last word, Sean.
This is the best possible time to be alive and excited about human spaceflight. Whatever it is that you were excited about, whatever it is that you want to do, however it is that you want to contribute, even if that path doesn't exist yet, you can build it. So when we're talking about what spaceflight will look like in the year 2050, it starts today, whether you are a scientist, a pilot, an engineer, an artist, an entrepreneur, an athlete. That starts today. And then to bring it home to what Hazzaa was saying, it's not just one person. It takes entire teams across disciplines, and it takes going there together.
Yes.
Hazzaa Al Mansouri and Shawna Pandya, this is your applause. Thank you both so very much for joining us today. Dubai Future Horizons will continue tomorrow here at the same time at South by Southwest with Patrick Norg and Matt Carmichael. So what are we going to do here tomorrow at 1 p.m.? We're going to look into a groundbreaking study on what futurists actually think about the world. First time this has been surveyed. So please join us again tomorrow. Follow the amazing program at Museum of the Future at South by Southwest. It's a beautiful website. And I highly recommend getting your chocolate before you leave. Thank you to the amazing team here, Iman, Isabella, Abdullah, Inas, Dunay, and many others, Brandon, and the team, the amazing people, David, Toby, and so many others behind the stage. And see you soon on Horizons. And thank you, amazing audience, for contributing with your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.